You came in, you said, if you ain't first, you're last.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to From the Frame Up, the podcast that weaves through traffic to cover the most important topics in the automotive industry. I am your host, Jared Jones, and thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have a special episode for you. It's a recap of yesterday's Indianapolis 500 that saw an unlikely hero climb the fence for the fourth time in his career. To dive into the episode and give us some inside opinion and insight, we tapped an autosport expert. TSN Racing podcast host Marshall Ferguson talks to us about some of the strategy that went into the win and some cool storylines that went on behind the scenes. Before we get into the episode, some housekeeping. CSN Collision Centers owns From the Frame Up. I am the marketing communications specialist at CSN Collision Centers, which is a network of more than 200 collision, auto body, paint, and glass repair facilities located across Canada. Using outstanding customer service and high-quality repairs, CSN Collision Centers safely repair more than 200,000 vehicles per year, helping Canadians get back on the road with the trust and confidence that their vehicle has been repaired to like-new condition the first time. Visit csncollision.com for more details. Trust CSN Collision Centers will straighten it out. Housekeeping's done. Let's get into the episode. Talking to me today, Marshall Ferguson. Find him at TSN_Marsh online. Check out the episode recapping the Indy 500. Joining me today for this special edition of From the Frame Up, an Indy 500 recap episode, my boy Marshall Ferguson. Marshall, say what's up to the people.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on, JJ. This is exciting, man. The Indy 500 is the granddaddy of them all, and I get to be the guy that tells you all of my thoughts and opinions about how it shook out. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. For those that don't know, give them a little bit of a background about what you do, who you are, why they should believe you, and all of your red-hot takes about what happened yesterday in the Indy.
Well, I used to throw really wobbly footballs to Jared Jones, and then from there, I progressed into being somebody who got into the media game. I did the morning show in Hamilton for 6 years. I've always been a fan of motorsport and autosport, but I ended up getting into the TSN Racing podcast. Tim Hauraney does a great job hosting that, and we became fast friends, and then we ended up doing that for a while together and still enjoy being able to pop on there whenever possible and contributing to what he's doing, which is he's a great analyst of all things F1, Indy Car, NASCAR. You should definitely follow him if you love any of this stuff. But and I've always kind of wanted to expand. So, I've got some opportunities coming up to do some commentary for racing in Canada and some different things that hopefully once we get people back to live sporting events will actually come to fruition.
That's amazing. Really excited to hear that you're going to continue your love for racing, getting to do some stuff on this side of the border. On the other side of the border, things seemed very normal yesterday. 135,000 people in the stands for the Indy 500 to watch a four-time winner, the four-time winner, Helio Castroneves, climb the fence. The Spider-Man was back. He won it 01-02. The last time more than a decade ago in 09. He does it again in this kind of post-COVID era. Give me your feedback on the race. Give me your thoughts on the Spider-Man climbing the fence again.
It honestly made me so happy. So, and this is, I'm guilty of this sometimes on social media where I'll send something out and after 5 minutes, if it doesn't have a single interaction, I'm like, yeah, that was dumb. I just delete it. I actually saw Helio Castroneves pass, I think it was Connor Daly in maybe lap 80 of the 200. And in all caps, I tweeted out, Helio, with a bunch of exclamation marks because I couldn't believe, oh my God, he's doing the thing. And then as soon as you ended up having him, get to the front of the field and they start cycling through and there's 2 or 3 more pit stops. And I'm like, okay, he's around, he's in contention. But the Indy 500 is always about who is the person who's just lingering from the very start of the race until the last 5 laps, because you have to be close in order to make it work. And he wasn't really that prototypical Indy 500 winner. So he was kind of bouncing throughout the middle of the field. And at points he would get up into the top and then he would disappear for a while because of pit strategy. And because there's so many pit stops, it's tough to know who's cycling through and who's really fighting for the lead until you get to the last 15, 20 laps. And all of a sudden he's right there. And that was when I started to realize, he could do this. Because when I was a kid, I would go to races, whether it was the streets of Toronto Indy or if it was at Watkins Glen when Indy Car would go there. And I would see Tony Kanaan and Helio Castroneves And now it's like all those names of the past, some of them are hanging on, but he's easily the best of it. And that's not just recency bias of him winning the Indy 500. It's the fact that you look at a lot of the names of people he was racing with, they're either fringe participants or they're not even in the sport anymore. So when he ends up pulling off the pass with 2 to go, I turn to my fiance and I'm like, I start yelling at her and she's like, why are you so excited? I'm like, I saw this guy when I was young, when I was little. I watched him and he was great then. And it's like, I'm a grown man and I have a son and he's doing the thing. And like, I was myself about how excited I was about it. So I think for fans of not just motorsport, autosport, but just sport, to see somebody that is so well liked get to have a celebration like that in front of so many people. I mean, every team was coming down the pit lane and hugging him and embracing him and telling him how happy they were. And I thought it was a really, really fun moment for sport, not just racing.
That's really well said. And it kind of painted the picture that they had been predicting the entire pre-race. Danica Patrick, Mike Tirico, they were talking on and on about it's the old guard versus the new kids. Yeah. And it turned out to be the old guard that showed some not so old tricks, kind of just hanging around, the typical thing that the Indy's famous for. You got to be in the mix towards the end. And you're right, he was kind of just hovering back and forth. The pit strategy seemed to be something that almost worked out for Graham Rahal and then didn't. Talk to me a little bit about what went wrong there. He lost the rear left coming out of the pits, and they seemed to have the right strategy, and then everything went to dust.
It's such a great advertisement for CSN Collision Centers, really is. Right. Because what ends up happening is, and I don't know what's worse, because when I was watching the last Formula One race, Valtteri Bottas couldn't get I think it was his front right that couldn't come off. So, and they actually machined the actual gear on the inside and they couldn't pop the wheel off. And Mercedes made fun of it because, 2 weeks later, they put out a promotional video of them finally getting the tire off after 2 weeks of having it being stuck on the car. But
which I'm sure Valtteri loved, by the way.
Exactly, of course. But I don't know what's worse, having your tire not able to come off, leading to a DNF, or having your tire come off so quickly that you end up smashing into the wall at 250 kilometers an hour. And I honestly felt so bad for Rahal because I didn't think he was a real competitor. But as he came down pit lane, they said, Rahal's doing better on gas mileage than anybody out here. And as we start to cycle through, he might be able to go on one pit stop shorter than everybody else. And if he does that, he'll be in contention, no question, at the end. And then sure enough, he comes out, he rounds the corner, the tire pops off, he slams into the wall. I'm glad nobody was hurt. Obviously, that was the biggest concern for me, was that could have been really, really scary. But at the same time, my initial thought was, poor Graham. And then I thought, how about the dude who knew he didn't secure the tire all the way on? Because as Graham is exiting the pit, that dude has to be screaming. Like, we've all been there, right? Where you have a boss, something goes wrong. And for most of us, it's like a little slap on the wrist of, well, I didn't get my deliveries done today, or I didn't quite cook the pizza well enough. But when you
Can I recall that email? Can I recall that?
Exactly. Sorry, I replied all. That's my fault. I shouldn't have done that. And it doesn't matter. When you have somebody leaving the pit and you're like, hey, I don't know who needs to know this, but he has 3 wheels. And like, you're going out at that speed where, again, the top end, they're 370 kilometers an hour. And obviously these pit guys and women are so close with the drivers. They spend so much time around them. There's so much time invested. They're at Indy for damn near a month. So the idea of having all of that happen, and then you send out your driver who has a connection to your team and all your sponsors and the millions of dollars that go into that, and you send them out on 3 wheels, I actually felt sick to my stomach for the person who did not secure the wheel. And it might not have been their fault. It might have been a technical issue or a machinery issue or whatever. But I looked at that and I thought, I felt so bad for him. He deserved better. But at the same time, if you were pushing at the end, I still think Elio was probably the fastest in the last 15, 20 laps. I mean, he was setting fastest average speeds within the last 30, 40 laps that I thought that probably proved that whoever was there, whoever had the best mileage, all things being considered equal, Elio had the pace, which is what wins you the Indy 500.
Definitely. And despite the fact that DraftKings had him at plus 3,000 pre-race, Elio pulled it off. You talked a little bit about, some of that pit strategy, and the pit seemed to be the thing that told the story. Scott Dixon, Alexander Rossi, they both get stuck in the pit. The favorite to win the race, the pole sitter, gets a lap down very early on in the 500, fights his way to come back. I'm going to ask you later, who your racer of the day was. Scott Dixon was my racer of the day. I thought that the adversity that he faced going down a lap, fighting all the way back, I thought it was just incredible. What did you think about what was going on in the pits? It seemed the experts couldn't really figure out what was going on with the braking strategy coming into pit lane. People were locking up. It seemed that everybody locked up going in there. And then once they were in there, vapor lock took over. Couldn't get the car started again. What happened in the pits?
Yeah, for me, the braking issue coming in was based primarily near the start of the race on the air temperature, right? Like, it was one of the cooler races that we've had in the last 10, 20 years, I think they said on the broadcast there on NBC. So when the tire temperatures are not where they need to be early in the race, then you're going to end up having guys basically just guessing on where the braking point is. It's insane still what they do for the braking point, because if you end up sitting in the pits for 1 second longer, or you brake 1 second earlier than your opponents going into the pit, that 1 second when you're driving 370 kilometers an hour is a football field in a second. So you're giving up a football field for every second that you are not daring. So it forces these guys to be super, super aggressive when they're entering the pit, which, again, when you downshift at the wrong time, you're just going to lock up the rear wheels. And at that point, you're just a spinning top, as we saw a couple of different times over. But I think the pit strategy always is key to that. I love, as somebody who enjoys all racing, Formula One, you might get a one-stop or max a two-stop strategy most of the time, unless it's a rain race. In Indy Car, where you go the 500, it's like 5-6 stops, and there's so much room for variation. Unfortunately, there's room for error. You know, you mentioned Danica Patrick. I remember multiple Indy 500s where she just had errors in the pit, and it wasn't any fault of her own, and she ends up finishing towards the back of the field. And that's the natural challenge that you get in the Indy 500. The setup of it is that you have to be able to work as a team, because the driver gets the credit, but at the end of the day, it's the team that wins the race. And I felt like watching what they were able to do through the race to try and correct the brake temperatures and the tire wear and when to come in, the strategies, the fuel loads. They got used to it over the course of the race, but it took some time. And I think it really did throw a wrench into a lot of teams' kind of strategy in the first half of the race, which, again, that first half, you say, well, let's just get to the end. Okay, but if you get to the end and you're in 20th place, who cares? You still have to push in the front half of the race. And that's why the winners are able to stay in that top 5, top 10 consistently through the first half. And then they strike in the second half of the race. Yeah,
for sure. Really well said. Loved what Will Power was doing. Loved the name as well, until unfortunately the pit lane struck for him as well. Give me your racer of the day. Like looking at 200 laps, tell me who you thought ran the best race. I'll give you Elio, but maybe a second racer that really blew you away in terms of, wow, I don't know how this guy or girl made it from where they started to where they ended up.
So it's not necessarily from, where they started to where they ended for me, but I would say that the tie in the Young Guns division that I was so excited about the entire time was Rinus VeeKay and Colton Herta, because Rinus VeeKay is, for anybody who loves F1, like Max Verstappen light. Like, he's a kid from the Netherlands who is a big dude, strong, physical, and you have to be to drive these cars in Indy because they do not have the power steering capabilities, right? So you're fighting the wheel the whole time. And so I thought those two guys, I really thought they were going to be there right to the very end, and they basically were, but they didn't get the chance to push. Connor Daly was fun. The hometown story, the crowd going crazy. He got a pass, I thought was fantastic. And then the one that you already mentioned, but for me, Will Power, starting at the back when he had the drama at the start where he couldn't get the car fired. Once he got the car fired and he goes on the opening lap, he's 32nd, and they show the onboard of him like he's just out in rush hour traffic on the 401, cruising from lane to lane. Oh, let me hop over here. Oh, there's an opening over there. And it was almost like when you see in Talladega Nights, you got Jean Girard sipping the macchiato as he's cruising around people and just making moves that were so smooth and so effortless. Will Power is such a raw, genuine racer that you could tell the back of the field, they're all going, okay, I'm younger guys predominantly. I'm going to get on the throttle here, and how much speed can I carry in with the cold tires with people in front of me? And Will Power was like, oh, you guys are going to wait to figure that out? Awesome. I'm just going to blow around the outside of you at, again, 300 plus kilometers an hour. So in terms of the raw onboard talent and watching the way that he attacked the field, I loved what Will Power did.
Nice. I love that. I thought he ran a great race. I already talked about Scott Dixon. Obviously, we're both Ontario guys. James Hinchcliffe is the CSM brand ambassador, so was definitely pulling for him. Stillville native Dalton Kellett, really wanted to see him do well. I thought Karam Sage did a fantastic job from I think P31 to get up into the top 15. I thought he ran a fantastic race. So that was probably my favorite.
And I would mention as well, one that I forgot was Alex Palou. Like Alex Palou was lingering at the front of the field for an extended period of time, about 2/3 through the race. And I'm like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be in this conversation, but he was. It was a great race by him.
Yeah, for sure. And it was so entertaining. A slice of Americana on Memorial Day weekend, the military presence, the Navy officers singing the anthem, 135,000 mostly unmasked fans in the stands, which is great. A great sign for the U.S. It was a fun weekend for sure. A great race. No Americans in the podium, even though that they wish that it was. It was really entertaining to see, though. Some of that international flavor kind of mix in to the podium. I'm going to ask you this post-race. Who was your favorite going in? Like, who did you think really had the best chance to win other than Scott Dixon, who just was blitzing the field all practice weekend in qualifying?
Yeah, I thought it was Herta, honestly. Like, I've watched a big chunk of the early season here in Indy Car, and Colton Herta, his strategy, his demeanor, the way that he handles the car, like even from the first race at Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama, like, he's attacked this season as still a young guy, but he's attacked it with a maturity that's way beyond his years. And I thought, when you go into Indy, you always look for the storyline, because it always ends up being this romanticized, Helio wins and we all come away with, oh, it's the old man at 46 and it's been forever. And there's always something, because Indy's kind of a magical place that creates those magical storylines. And I thought Herta, with the connection to his dad being his strategist, I really enjoy listening to the Herta on-air, onboard radio, because it's constantly just Colton Herta going, "Dad, what should I do?" And then Brian Herta being like, "Just relax, like you're going to be okay," because his dad has been there. His dad's been a racer, right? So I love being able to listen to that, because again, in so many different places, like Carlos Sainz in F1, his dad was an F1 racer, and what you've seen from different guys in Indy Car, they've had their dads involved, but very rarely do you have them in your ear the entire race. And there's this really special connection. I thought that would be a great story, and he's got the talent to do it. He's looked great this year. It didn't turn out, but as I say, he was really, really competitive at such a young age. And, maybe he's wishing that he has Helio's longevity, because 25 years from now, we could be sitting here in 2046 and we're talking about 46-year-old Colton Herta getting a chance to win the Indy 500 again.
Unreal. We've flown around the track on this recap episode. Before I let you go, want to ask, do you want to play Fast Five?
Yes, of course.
Awesome.
Ask any racer, any real racer.
So on this podcast, we love the Fast and the Furious movie franchise. I'm the manager of the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson fan club. And there's something awesome about a movie franchise that went from a bunch of misguided 20-somethings racing cars stealing DVD players to like coalescing and like working with British SAS and like international Department of Defense agencies. It's just so cool. So it's 5 car-related questions. You answer them as fast as you can. Are you all set?
Perfect.
On your mark, get set, go. The car you learned to drive in?
Mini Cooper S.
The nickname of the car you're driving right now?
I should have nicknamed it, but I didn't, because when the Mini Cooper S almost exploded on the highway, I had to get a car as quickly as possible. And I got a Mazda 3 that I was just thankful for. So maybe I should just call it Thank You.
Okay. Your favorite food to eat in the car?
Protein bar, because I'm usually running somewhere for work.
Favorite song to listen to on a road trip?
Oh man, that is a great one. You know what? Honestly, I listen to more podcasts. I listen to this podcast exclusively when I'm in the car. But no, for me, it's something by City and Color. So I would say Nowhere, Texas by City and Color. And your, what's the last one? Your favorite car from a TV show or movie? Lightning McQueen. Nice, time. That's not, we're not going to say the time out loud. I do that when it doesn't look great. You're not in first. You're not in last. In true Talladega Nights fashion, that's not good. If you're not first, you're last. So you came in last place. But thank you, Marshall, for playing. And thank you to the Mini Cooper for not hurting Marshall in that fiery crash or mechanical incident. Perhaps a reason why when you're driving a high-end vehicle, you should get it repaired by the experts. CSN Collision Centers will straighten it out. There's a shameless plug. Marsh, you've been fantastic. Hopefully we get to do this again. Unfortunately, maybe not the Honda Indy. That doesn't look like it's coming to Toronto this year. Maybe we'll do something for Formula One, because we're both Formula One guys as well.
But we appreciate your time. Anything else you want to say to the people before you go? Where can they find you? Where can they check out your work?
Yeah, at TSN_Marsh is where you can find me, and chipping away, getting ready for hopefully having fans back in the stands at Canadian racing venues. There's so many great places around the country, and of course the CFL season coming up, which I'm deeply invested in as well. So better times ahead for everybody. But thanks for having me on, JJ. It's fun. It's always great to reconnect with you.
Thank you for coming on. That's it for us. We appreciate Marshall Ferguson's time. You can check out From the Frame Up at fromtheframeup.ca. We're on SoundCloud at From the Frame Up, and we have a YouTube channel. Search From the Frame Up on YouTube. That's it. That's all.